potential milestone for China, creating some new concerns about its growing military power. China reportedly landing a homegrown fighter jet on its new aircraft carrier. Is this a sign of new strength or maybe something else? Retired Major General Bob Scales is a Fox News military analyst. Gordon Chang is the author of The Coming Collapse of China. Welcome to you both. So, General Scales, you're not so sure about some of the images we got of this fighter jet. Tell us why.
Yeah, Jenna, it just looks like a pretty much a publicity stunt. These are pictures of a touch and go by a Chinese knockoff of an old Soviet fighter. The aircraft carrier in question was built for the Soviets in the mid-'80s. The Chinese are a long way from being able to conduct fleet operations with modernized aircraft and ships. It's sort of like the Chinese Navy still trying to learn to ride a bicycle with training wheels on.
So we just showed our viewers a picture that showed two men sort of crouching down behind an aircraft. We did that because you mentioned this to us. What does that show us? And we'll show that again to our viewers.
Well, it just, again, it looks like the whole thing is staged. I mean, having sailors that close to a jet exhaust on an American carrier would be absolutely against the rules. Clearly what the Chinese are doing is trying to stage this for the world to be impressed with their naval capabilities, which, quite frankly, Jenna, as far as aircraft carriers are concerned, simply isn't there yet and probably won't be for another decade, Jenna.
Gordon, what do you think about that, the timeline? Because we've of course, talked a lot about the pivot east that the president wants to put in place when it comes to foreign policy and our attention in general. You know, when you hear a story like this and General Scales' reaction, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm concerned because, you know, it's not so much their capabilities today, but China is trying to intimidate its neighbors. And we know that they've been using forceful tactics to take the territories of other nations, like the Japanese, the South Koreans, 5 nations surrounding the South China Sea. They want Taiwan. They're trying to deny the United States the right to patrol international water and airspace. You know, I don't know how else to say this, but China's a threat.
General Scales, your reaction to Gordon's thoughts that China's a threat, they're building up their military, we're, you know, confronting sequestration, defense cuts. When you look at the priorities around the world, where do you place this?
Well, clearly it's not China. We're not going to fight China. The serious threat to our nation is still the Middle East and South Asia, as we've seen in recent events. And the big question in Washington right now is how big of a presence or how big of a footprint are we going to leave in places like Afghanistan? And that seems to be the most serious question of the day, Jen.
You know, let's talk a little bit about that, Gordon, because one of the things that we do see is China and its private businesses, or really not necessarily private businesses, going into Afghanistan, setting up some big mining companies and capabilities there. They, of course, were not involved in the war like we have been, but it looks like they're making moves inside that country. What should we know about that?
Well, you know, China has always tried to use its economic might to try to tame its neighbors, and it does have a common, though short, border with Afghanistan. You know, China has always had real ambitions in the Middle East. It's got a very strong relation with Iran. It's been proliferating nuclear weapons technology to Iran, and it's been supporting North Korean proliferation efforts. So this is going to be a concern. You know, whether it's the South China Sea or Iran, China has been a factor.
And it brings up the question, General Scales, about what our role is, as you mentioned, in Afghanistan. Do we leave 10,000 troops, as has been reported? You know, that's a number that's been thrown out there. Right. Do we leave that? You know, our own companies, our own banks and financial institutions are sort of making moves in Afghanistan as well.
Right.
Does that mean that we keep other countries out of there based on the fact that we've been there for the last decade? What do we do?
Well, Jenna, it's really not so much about the numbers as it is really about the strategy, and I think you hit on it pretty well. What does the administration want to do in Afghanistan? Do they want to have a light footprint with only the ability to do night raids and predator strikes out of Afghanistan? If we do, well, that number's about 10,000. Do they want to continue to support and train and assist the Afghan military in the years ahead, say beyond 2014? That requires boots on the ground, as you know, and that number then ratchets up U.S. presence after 2013. 2014 to something in the realm of 25 to 30,000. For this administration, those are big numbers. So the question is, over the next year or so, what's our strategy going to be, and what's the number that's going to go with that strategy, Jenna?
And based on your viewpoint, Gordon, as you take a closer look at North Korea and China, and you mentioned the small border that China shares with Afghanistan, what do you think would be wise for our country in the next several years about how many troops we do leave at Afghanistan?
Well, I think we need to leave more than the administration wants because, you know, as we pull back, the Taliban will move in. And I don't think that it's a good idea to allow the Taliban to run that country again, because we saw what happened in 2001 when they were able to control Kabul. So we do not want to give them that sanctuary. I know that it's politically unpopular to stay, but sometimes you have to do it because of your vital security interests.
Major General Scales and Gordon Chang, nice to have you both today. We look forward to having you back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna.